The Best in the World podcast with Richard Parr.
Hello and welcome to The Best in the World with Richard Parr. I've been a sports broadcaster for over 10 years, working at the likes of Al Jazeera, Sky Sports and Eurosport. I've interviewed some of the most talented people on the planet, such as Manny Pacquiao, Rafael Nadal, Serena Williams, Michael Phelps, Zlatan Ibrahimovic, Floyd Mayweather, and many, many more. And so each week on the Best in the World podcast, I'll be speaking to athletes and sports stars who have reached the pinnacles of their careers. These are people who have been world champions or the equivalent, be it Olympic or Paralympic champions or world number ones. We'll look at what these talented individuals do to achieve their success. This can include training, nutrition, determination, sacrifices, time management, home environment, and much, much more. I want to know what makes these people different to the average man or woman on the street. And perhaps we can use these insights for our own sporting ambitions or just our everyday lives. First up on the show is Chester Williams, the only non-white player in South Africa's 1995 Rugby World Cup winning squad. We talk about everything from how he got into rugby to winning the cup, time management, the movie Invictus, his friendship with Nelson Mandela, and much more. Of course, if you've got any feedback on the show, I'd love to hear from you. You can contact me on Twitter at Richard_Parr, that's P-A-R-R. And you can also visit the website richardparr.net. Also get in touch if you're interested in becoming a sponsor of the show. But because this is the first episode, I'm giving it away. It's going to be sponsor free. But enough of that for now. Let's get on with it. Let's hear from the legendary Chester Williams.
The Best in the World podcast with Richard Parr.
Chester, welcome to the Best in the World with Richard Parr. Obviously, you've got a long storied career, Rugby World Cup triumphs, you've been a coach, but what are you up to right now in your life and your career?
I'm a rugby coach for a university back home, UWC, University of the Western Cape, predominantly black players. And so yes, that's what I'm doing. And I'm also marketing director for a petroleum company called Ford Africa Petroleum.
And what in particular, from your time as a player, do you try and teach on these young players at university? What would you say are the one or two real crucial things you try and get into their heads?
It's probably discipline, the self-discipline to go out there and do the extra work as an athlete, because that's the most important, And meaning extra work is not when you have your own time. It's when you're on the training field with the coach and with the respective trainers in the gym, and work as hard as possible as you can for that time being, because you still need that recovery for after your training session. So you can't go and do some extra work like I did anyway. So it's very important to understand that not everyone want to have the talent, but a lot of people have potential.
Okay, and how do we go from potential to greatness?
Yeah, it's through hard work, through extra work, do that extra thing that you identify your weaknesses, and if there's any. Surely if your potential, there is some weaknesses in there, and where there's 1, 2, 3, or 5 different principles, you have to go and work on it, and that's what I did. I knew I didn't have enough speed, and didn't have the capability of the high ball, for instance, catching the high ball, but then I went and worked on it. The speed never got better, much faster, but I started to work on my vision, because I had better vision on how to see when things are going to happen before it happens, and that made me actually the best in my position.
And are there any routines you use today that you use back in your playing days, things that you would do every day that you still use today, which you've learnt from rugby in your everyday life now?
Well, it's probably the most important thing for me is probably time. Time, is very important for me. It shows that you respect other people, and I'm very adamant with time. When they tell me I need to be at a certain time, I'm always there 5 minutes before. And if I'm late, then I really did something must have happened or kept me back from it. But at least people understand it, because then they know time is very important. Time plays a very important role in your discipline with regards to when and why you're doing things.
How do you schedule that? Do you have a little notebook? Do you put it in your iPhone? Does someone look after that for you? How do you do that? Or are you just across every time you have to be somewhere?
No, of course, my wife is very, very diligent with that. She makes sure that my bookings are 100% right, and make sure that I'm there on time. Not that she have to, but I'm always reminds me on that as well. And then also while I'm here, she scheduled to me, and then obviously communicate accordingly via the WhatsApps and all the social networks you've got.
Oh, that's fantastic. And I recently heard that you've just got a degree in sports.
Yes, I've decided to go while I was working in Romania in my spare time. I just thought I might as well go to university and do something, and that is probably something that I always wanted to get behind my name, is the degree. And I went and studied a BA degree in sports science at the University of Timisoara in Romania. And about 5 weeks ago, I got graduated from with my degree.
Oh, congratulations. From that course, what is there that you've learnt from that you wish you'd known as a player?
It's probably the management of myself and others around you, and I think that is actually going to make me a much better coach now, because I've learned that you have to understand the individual a lot more to be a team player.
And you mentioned your coaching. You mentioned Romania there. I believe you've done some in Uganda and a few other countries as well. How easy is it to convey what you want to coach these players when it's in different languages?
That's probably one of the aspects that make me probably different to all the coaches now, because I've learned to understand the different cultures of different individuals, whether they're from Romania, New Zealand, Australia, South Africa. And when I was in Uganda, I only worked obviously with all the Ugandan people. But when I went to Tunisia, I worked with Tunisian, and then I went to Romania. And in Romania, I worked with Romanians, Australians, South Africans, English, Australians, all different cultures there. And how to bring the cultures together made me actually think about the game. I had to think about how do I communicate with each and everyone at the same level. And eventually I found a method to make sure that everybody understands what I want and expect from them.
Oh, wow. Well, and of course that's very different to your childhood. When did you first get interested into rugby?
Well, I've got the family rugby tree as well, because my dad was a very well-known rugby player in my community. He played for the Proteas at the time, which is actually a black Springbok team, representing the black people when touring sides come in to visit South Africa. And then I stopped when I was 11 years old, and started to play again when I was 17 years old. And from there on, obviously, I started to make all the levels to play for Western Province League, and then Western Province. And Western Province League is actually the so-called black under 18 school team. And then we played against, obviously, the Western Province team is the white school team. Then we went to an international or national tournament called the Craven Week, where we play all the different provincial schools play against each other. That's not the top of the top in South Africa. And from there on, I got selected for Western Province under 20 and became in the Western Province League again, seniors, and then Western Province seniors as well. And from there, I got selected in 1993 for the Springbok team.
Oh, wow.
And but my uncle Everett Williams also, he played against the English in 1984 against the English in South Africa for the Springboks.
Oh, wow. And obviously you had your father, you had your uncle. Who was it you looked up to the most, and who do you think you learnt from the most as you were developing as a rugby player?
Well, I think I've admired my dad, obviously, because I mean, just the way he played, for who he played, and I always went with him to the rugby games, being a ball boy as well, sometimes as well. Learning from the game itself, I think I've learned from overall with regards to the game itself, because the more I watch and see it, the better I became. And I always tell the young kids today, if you want to know more about rugby, if you want to learn more about rugby, it's actually what you see on TV all the time. Watch it as much as you can, and when you get to the game or the practice, it actually happens naturally because you see it, you already have it back of your mind subconsciously.
When you rejoined rugby at 16, 17, was it, I'm going to win the World Cup? Or how difficult was it being a black player during apartheid to, when you told friends that you had whatever this dream was, and what they thought?
Well, initially I was just wanted to become to be one of I would become a Western Province League player that can play in the national Cranbrook side for my province, and when I went and played there, I got selected for the so-called South African B team and the school's B team, and then I realized, but wow, I somehow I must have potential, and I can actually achieve something out of playing rugby. And then that's when I suddenly realized, look, I've got a chance to become a Springbok one day if I really want to. And from then onwards I worked. So I've worked actually very, very hard. I remember, I had to travel by train to work. I was working in the Navy at the time. I trained for 2 hours, standing most of the time because the train was full. Because in those days the black people were only allowed to travel in a third class carriage, because the first and the second class was only for white people. And I would go to work for 2 hours and come back and then go straight to Western Province, the white Western Province team, go and train for them as well after work. And I seldom got home before 11 o'clock because I had to travel by train. And then when I get to the train station, there was no taxis for me, so I had to run back home or walk home to get back. And I got up in the morning at 3:30 to catch a train at 4:30 in the mornings to get back to work. And that happened for about 5 to 6 days a week. And it was difficult times. When some team, there's most of the time they couldn't use the same bathroom or toilets as the white people at the station, so you had to queue up in the line to using toilets. And then also, there was I remember vividly the times when I was playing for my club in Paarl. There was Paarl League. There was a black team that we were playing for, and we would go on a bus to try to play against the white teams, and then you had to get dressed in on a bus to run on the field because the change room was only for white people. Get off the field, we get straight on the bus back home because after match function was only for whites. So it was difficult times, but you know what? I wanted to become a Springbok, and I did everything. I tried everything that I could. And I did everything that I could, and eventually, obviously, I became a Springbok through my hard work, through my discipline, the respect for other people, and that's still the thing that I'm doing. I still believe that if you have respect for another person, he will treat you exactly the same. If they don't, you just move on and keep on learning and keep on doing things that is working for you in life.
And so then we get towards the World Cup, 1995. South Africa is hosting it, and you get injured just before the tournament.
Yeah.
Mentally, how did you cope with that when you're thinking I can play on the grander stage, and then it's almost just taken away from you? What was going through your head when that happened?
Well, it was extremely disappointing, because when I got injured, I thought, okay, I've got 2 weeks before the opening match. And I really wanted to play in that opening match because I know what it would mean for South Africa, because obviously Nelson Mandela and myself had already discussed about the change that I will make while I'm in the Rugby World Cup. Unfortunately for me, I got injured, and my recovery took longer than I thought it was, and I had to withdraw from the team. It was really disappointing. It was I think for a lot of South Africans as well, knowing what it meant for South Africa for me to be part of the Rugby World Cup. Lucky for me, 2 weeks later I got called back into the Rugby World Cup again, and obviously I was very nervous, very knowing that the world is watching me, knowing that people want to see if I'm really am merit in this team. And luckily for me, or through all my hard work, through all my patience and respect for other people, is that I scored 4 tries in that opening game in the Rugby World Cup in the quarterfinals. And obviously the next day the billboards was full of Chester Williams, the Black Pearl, so it was great to see me back in the team. It was great to be part of the team, and when I got back, actually after my injury in the team, we were not only friends, we became actually family, the team. We were so close and so excited about winning this Rugby World Cup, because we understood then the meaning of us winning the Rugby World Cup.
And you mentioned that you were on billboards, and I think you were on planes as well. How much pressure did that then put on you? And was it at any point an unwanted distraction taking away from the game itself for you?
I don't think it was a distraction for me. I think it was great for me. In those days, we were still amateurs, so it was as a way of marketing myself, getting more people aware of Chester Williams, the Black Pearl in South Africa. That's what they called me. And it was this, it was also a lot of pressure on me with regards to representing my people in the World Cup and convincing them that there is hope for them to become Springboks one day, or at any level, at any sport in principle they participate in. And for me, to go on the field and do what I do best is obviously, at the time, was playing rugby, and represent my country with honor and pride was a lot of pressure. But off the field, there was a lot of pressure, as I just mentioned now to you, is that because the expectations from people when you see them, but when you're on that field, it's so much easier because you're in control. You know what you want to do, what you have to do, how you're going to do things, because you understand the game much better than anyone else in your position, probably. That's why I was number one in my position. So the minute I walk off the field, the pressure's back on me, because the expectations is more and more, because the better you play, the more expectations are there. And the more tries you score, the more tries people want you to score. And the more tackles you make, the more better tackles they expect you to do. But you know what? It was also great to know that my teammates were so supporting of me. They was always around me to make sure that I'm looked after. So yes, and especially when I was a player, I was very shy and very reserved, in my approach and everything. Rugby made me grow as a human being, actually stronger.
Did it help being shy at all?
I think I would have been probably better for me to be more open and be more liberal to everyone around me. It would probably give me a better world image, and not only in South Africa. But that's just that's the way life is, man. But obviously, because I would teach my kids not to be like that. My kids now must be really open. They must communicate with everybody. They must tell them what their mind tells them to say, and that's the way it is, I was shy, but it's maybe meant to be like that.
Did you have any pre-game rituals?
No, not really. The only time this one thing I did, I would whistle before the game in the change room, and the song, and it was always the "Yes, I don't believe in if anymore." That was what I would whistle in the change room. If it made sense to them, the people around me, I don't know, but to me it made sense, to make the whistle, if it sounded like that. But I do that. And no, that's probably the only thing I did. And then just before kickoff, I would always go and greet the people in my corner when I go and stand, to say hello, how are you, just to make myself more relaxed. And once the game starts, obviously, that I know that I'm focused and know what to do.
Oh wow! And did you do those things because it was like a lucky omen, or was it just it became a habit, or?
I would say it was not. It's probably become more a thing that makes me more relaxed.
Okay.
before the games, make me more focused on what I want to do, and what the team needs me to do. And that's why I did that whistling, and that's why I went to say hello to the people, just to make sure that I'm focused. I know what I need to do, because I think every sporting individual, he's got his certain ritual that he does to make sure that he can be successful in whatever competition he's going to compete.
So, Rugby World Cup final, did you do anything differently?
Rugby World Cup final, no, exactly the same. Nothing has changed. It was always been the same. From probably from day one when I played for Western Province, my first game I started to do that. Maybe because my first game I was too nervous, and I started to whistle in the change room. No one stopped me, so I just continued doing it, and I've never stopped since. I remember my physio, Bruce McLaughlin, came to me one day and said, after I retired, he said, you know what I hated the most of you was when you whistled in the change room, because I couldn't understand what were you whistling. You just whistle and it didn't make sense. I said, oh my word, yes, I don't believe in if anymore. That's what I tried to whistle, and he said, oh, but it didn't make sense at that time.
The Best in the World podcast with Richard Parr.
Now, this is the part of the show which would normally have a sponsor, but as I told you, this episode is sponsor free, doing it for you for free. But of course, if you want to be a sponsor in the future, just send me an email, richard@richardparr.net. We've got lots more interesting things coming up with Chester, and if you like this show, please go onto iTunes, give me a good review, give me a 5-star rating. That'll help boost the interest in the show, and the more interest, the even greater guests we can get, and the more learning we can all benefit from these top people around the world. And if you don't have the time to do that, but you like the show, tell a friend. Say, I was listening to the Best in the World podcast with Richard Parr. Take a listen when you're on the train, when you're on the bus, when you're in the gym. I would really appreciate that. But let's enjoy the rest of this interview with Chester Williams. Lots of interesting things coming up. Perhaps something very interesting about his future as a coach. Stay tuned.
The Best in the World podcast with Richard Parr.
And what were your emotions when that final whistle went and you realised that you were on top of the world, and what it meant for your country?
I think it was just a big relief for myself and my teammates, and just to see the people around the stadium, people embracing each other. Some were crying, some were laughing, some were holding their heads in disbelief that South Africa has won the Rugby World Cup. I think that's probably the first time that we really saw a United Nations or Rainbow Nation together in South Africa, with the help of Nelson Mandela, of course, and the Springbok team winning it. That combination was lethal for us to win that Rugby World Cup. But I believe still that when the All Blacks saw Nelson Mandela walk on the field greeting both teams, they probably realized, wow, these guys are really, really highly motivated, because it's going to be difficult to find another icon of the world like Nelson Mandela.
And you spent a lot of time with him, I believe, and I believe he was at your first wedding. What was it about him that drew so many people towards him, and what attributes about him could everyone embrace and learn from today?
I think his humanity, he was just another human being that respect and other people, and never looked down on people, always wants to help. For someone that spends so much time away from home in a prison that is not even it's so small that you can only have a single bed in there with a wash basin and a toilet. To spend that time there and come out of prison and still give forgiveness to all the people out in the world out there, it was just amazing. And the time he spent in jail was with only adults. And when I went and visited him with my kids, he couldn't stop playing for an hour with the kids, because that's what he missed most in prison was seeing children. And that's why he gave so much time of his life to children when he got out of prison.
It's an amazing story. I was there recently in Cape Town as well to see his cell. Just completely inspiring. Did you realise how much of an important role that match would play in the country as far as apartheid?
Well, I think we started to realise that already just before the quarterfinals. When we got when we got through to the quarterfinals, we had to go to the township, and obviously at first the white players did not want to go to the townships, because that's what Nelson Mandela requested them to do, and then Francois came and tell us that times have changed, so need we, and we went and visited the township, and that's when we realised, but this is bigger than just rugby. Because when we got to the township, the kids, that was just amazing that we were working with the black kids, and when it was time for us to leave, the white guys didn't want to get in the bus and to leave, because they couldn't understand, they couldn't believe how happy the kids were to see them, and still have a smile on with, despite their circumstances they're in. So that's when we all realized that there's something bigger than just rugby. In South Africa, we but we want to win the Rugby World Cup to make sure that our country will change forever.
Talking about how the country's changing forever, and talking about rugby, leading into this tournament, there was a bit of a row about the quota system of players in the team. What are your thoughts on that?
This current World Cup?
For this current World Cup right now, there was a row that there wasn't enough black players in the team.
Well, I think the row was not because of the current squad that's been selected. I think it was more around about the team that was selected against Argentina and South Africa just 2 weeks before the Rugby World Cup started, or 3 weeks before the Rugby World Cup started. And there was only 2 black players in the team, and they put a white player. They move a white player from centre, Jesse Criddle, to wing in the place of a black player, which did nothing wrong. And that was the biggest concern for us as South Africans back home. And obviously the pressure was then on the coach to make sure that he selected the squad with the 30% that was promised by everyone to have them at the Rugby World Cup.
Do you think that 30% is enough? Should it be less? Should it be more?
Well, the 30%, I think that was a request from government, from everyone, the rugby supporter, not supported, but the rugby people, the management of SA Rugby, and they got to the 30%. And I'm a firm believer of, if you don't enforce it upon them, it will never happen. So yes, we're already at 30%, which is, it is great. I mean, when I toured, we were 30 or 40 players, 36 players actually, and I was the only one that toured, and then now we got at least 9 players already in touring and a squad of 31. By 2019, they won 50% must be black and 50% must be white, and I think they can reach that point, because there's a lot of black players that is really looking good. They have talent. They have some of them have potential. So yes, those guys. I mean, there's definitely an opportunity for us to rectify everything that happened in the past.
Do you feel everyone's getting a fairer opportunity now then?
I would say everybody doesn't get that fair opportunity yet. And that's my biggest concern. It's not so much the quota system, it's about giving the guys the opportunity to establish themselves, to make sure that they can prove that after 5 games, then I can tell me I haven't done my best. I mean, I'm not good enough to play at the level, so rightfully they can drop me. But you can't drop a player after playing 20 minutes, 10 minutes in a test, and then drop him and say, you had a chance. It's not possible. You can prove yourself. When the other white kids get 5, 10 times opportunities to play in the Springbok team, to establish themselves, why can't they do it with the black players?
How much do you think the sport has changed by going from amateur to professional?
Yeah, that trains a lot, of course. The guys train now from morning till evening, not physically on the field only, but also have video sessions, make sure that the requirements for the diet requirements is right. And that's what the big change, that's the biggest change in rugby, is that we still had to go. When I was playing as a Springbok, I still had to go to work, and we train once or twice a week as a Springbok team, because in those days we were not allowed to get a week before together for a test. So you could only have a week of training before you played a test. And nowadays you can train whenever you want to.
Did you even think about nutrition in those days?
Nutrition, no. I mean, those days I had to eat as much as I can because I was small. I had to get as big as possible. There was not even we started gym very late, and then we did gym only once or twice a week. And nowadays there's like specialized training sessions for backline players, for outside backs, inside backs. The loose forward, the tight five. You have all different kind of gym sessions and field sessions. So, which is it's a lot of time. It's time consuming a lot, those sessions, and I understand why they have to get paid as much as they do.
Going to your coaching right now, do you teach your young players at the university about nutrition, and are they told to eat healthily?
That's the first thing that we're actually working with them now, is that, because this is not my first year that I'm actually taking this team and working. I've been there for 2 months now, and so that's the main thing. So off-season preparation with regards to nutrition, fitness and conditioning, and those things is very important for me now the next 2 months, or was for the last 2 months. Now we're going back into a pre-season phase, so that's going to change also now the supplements that they use and what they have to eat, and that's why it's very important for them to have lunch and dinners with us to see that they're eating the right food and getting the right supplements to use for not only for muscle building but also for recovery.
And so you say that's your aim right now with your coaching. Are you a goal-setting person? Do you set yourself targets? Do you set yourself time limits of when you want to achieve certain things in your life?
I don't think so that there's a time limit for me. I think it's just I think I'm a very almost like I wouldn't say a late developer, but my things always happen for me later, because then I feel much more experienced. I feel much more secure in what I'm doing, and I feel more dominant in when I do something. I know it's the right thing to do. So I'm not rushing things, and so there's I don't have time frames to when I want to reach a certain point of coaching.
Your Rugby World Cup victory was made into a movie, Invictus. Did I read that you were involved in the coaching of some of the?
Yes, I was part of on set, working for for 3 months with Damon, Morgan Freeman, and Clint Eastwood. Well, I must say, obviously we used a lot of amateur club rugby players that's at a very low level, which I think the rugby scenes was not the best. But we had to do what we've got with the players. But the most important thing is that the story out of the whole movie was more important than the rugby set up in the movie, because people wanted to know what happened before, during and after apartheid in South Africa.
What did you think of the actor playing you?
Well, I think he was he's ex-rugby, ex-Springbok himself, McNeil Hendricks. He could have been a little bit quicker, then it would be fine.
Did you give him any tips on how to get a bit faster?
No, he was already retired as well himself from rugby. But he was probably the best character that I could use at the time for him to play my role.
And was it weird watching it when you watched it for the first time, seeing that this is a story effectively of a very important part of your life?
It was not weird. It was just interesting to see what happened. During the time before and after the apartheid years and the Rugby World Cup itself, Nelson Mandela behind the scenes, what his planning was with the Rugby World Cup. So it was quite interesting to see that even though I knew what's coming, but you still wanted to see the movie itself, how I would perceive it, and it was really good. It was, I think it would say 95% is a really true story, and the other 5 to 10% was Hollywood, because it's just the way it is. It has to be some Hollywood in it, and that's why Matt Damon and Morgan Freeman was part of it.
And just a couple more questions. Firstly, do you have any regrets about your professional career, either as a player or as a coach so far?
I don't think I have any regrets. Probably as a player, no regrets. I just felt disappointed that I was not selected for the 1999 Rugby World Cup, because I was told that they had enough quota players, even though I played the 1995 Rugby World Cup and won it. At that time, we were the only team anywhere who won it, the Rugby World Cup, and it was very disappointing to think that people still think that I was a development player at the time. And funny enough, in that year, I scored 11 tries, the most tries scored by any Super Rugby player. So how could I be still a development player and not been selected anyway for that Rugby World Cup final? It's not a regret. It's just a disappointment for me at the time. And then coaching wise, probably when I was so close to be the coach of the Springbok team, maybe I should have accepted to be the assistant coach with Jake White.
This was 2007.
That was 2006, I think.
2006.
And maybe I should have done that, but I just felt at the time that I would like to learn more about the game at Super Rugby level. Unfortunately, the team that I had, the Cats, they split the year after, and then obviously the coaches of the respective unions were selected to be the coach, and I had to start all over again. But I'm not regretting it. I think it's probably a blessing in disguise that it happened, because now I've learned so much more about rugby and over the time now. So
is that still an ambition then?
It will always be an ambition. If it happens to come, then it will be great. So I'm looking forward to the challenge, and when it comes, I think I'm ready now. Because I've 15 years of experience of coaching. I think the most important thing of coaching is management. The management of players, because the coaching is very easy because you understand the game. The requisites for being a coach on the field is so much easier than off the field.
So you're the kind of coach who will take a few moments with a player, spend a day with them, or do you try and go? Because a lot of management I hear these days is that players have to go through the assistant coach and then speak to the coach. How does it work with you?
For me, it's very important that I get feedback from the assistant coach, but I would always have one-on-one with the individual itself, which is very important. That relationship between myself and the player is more important than anything else, because that relationship with the individual make the player a team player instead of an individual in the team.
Well, this has all been very, very interesting. If anyone wants to get in touch with you, how can they get in touch? Do you have a Twitter? Do you have a Facebook? If people want to reach out and find out more about Chester Williams, where would they go?
I have a foundation, the Chester Williams Foundation. You can just go www.Chester Williams Foundation, and then also I'm on Twitter, Chester Williams, Chester WM .Williams, and I've got Facebook. My Facebook, everybody can follow me on Facebook. So I try to be at all. a WeChat, WhatsApp. Of course, they can write to me whenever I want to. So I'm available. I'm open to speak to people.
You're connected around the world. That's fantastic.
No, it's very important to be connected around the world. Because I'm sitting in England, and we never know where will I end up next time.
Well, it's definitely been a pleasure talking to you today. Chester Williams, thank you for being the best in the world.
Thank you very much.
The Best in the World podcast with Richard Parr.
There we have it, the first podcast in the Best in the World with Richard Parr. what a fascinating guy Chester Williams is. The 1995 World Cup winner with South Africa. Of course, this Saturday we have the final between Australia and New Zealand. I'm sure you'll all be watching. Really interesting to get the insights from Chester on things such as Nelson Mandela, the movie Invictus, nutrition, time management. It was really intriguing speaking to him. And we've got great guests coming up. I'll be speaking to squash players, Paralympians, hockey players, footballers. We've got lots lined up here on the Best in the World podcast. So stay tuned. Follow me on Twitter. Check the iTunes feed. We're coming out every Wednesday. But for now, I'll see you next time on the Best in the World.
The Best in the World podcast with Richard Parr.